Hello and welcome everyone back to another episode of the College Sports Hive. That's Leif, I'm Scott, and we are here to talk conference championships. We're going to bring you our selections of teams that we believe are going to win each bracket. We'll pick the ACC championship bracket, the Big Ten, the Big East, the Pac-12, the Big 12, and the SEC. We'll also shout in a couple sleeper teams that we think could make a run towards the final you might not expect from each bracket as well. But we'll get things started here today, and we'll talk records from last week. Leaf with an awesome week, went 16-2 in his picks. That's just splendid, and he's now 3-1 against the spread, 124 and 75 overall. So congrats, Leaf. I went 14-4. That puts me at 123 and 76 overall. So Leaf gets a one-up game lead on me heading into these, and I'm 2-2 against the spread. So your thoughts on a monster week?
I told you, Duke. You can't pick Duke. That's the one thing that really helped me there, and it went to overtime, so I was a little nervous. As I was texting you, I was like, I can't be watching this because every time I turned it on, Duke was making a run. So I turned it off, and luckily, the Yellow Jackets of Georgia Tech had me. And then the other game that we differed on was Villanova. I took Villanova. I think Villanova would have rather lost that game and kept Colin Gillespie. So I guess I reaped some rewards from Villanova, but poor team. I felt really badly for them while I was watching that game.
Yeah, tough news, the loss of Colin Gillespie. We covered that earlier this week in our news episode for all of y'all, but good stuff there on 16-2. It's a massive week. All right, so let's jump right in here and let's talk the ACC. I guess I'll just open up the floor to you and give me your winner of this bracket and some reasoning as to why.
This is a tough one, and I guess I'll just take you guys through some of the seeds, because a few of these matchups have already happened. So in the first round happened, and Pittsburgh was defeated by Miami. So Miami is now playing Clemson. Duke beat Boston College in the 10 versus 15 matchup, and they'll be playing Louisville. And Notre Dame hit a buzzer beater and beat Wake Forest, and they'll be matching up with North Carolina. And so then your matchups become Syracuse, NC State, Miami, Clemson, Duke, Louisville, and Notre Dame, North Carolina. And then you have the teams with the double bye being Virginia and Georgia Tech. Virginia 1, Georgia Tech 4, Florida State 2, and Virginia Tech 3. So that's everyone in there. To answer your question, who's going to win? I think that the easiest side is the top side, which I guess makes sense, and that would be Virginia. But I think the team that I will be taking is Florida State. I think they closed the year poorly. But they had a loss against Notre Dame, but I think that just kind of motivates them. I think that they were playing really well before that loss. They lost to North Carolina and Notre Dame to close, and they were interesting. They have a tough matchup with either Duke or Louisville. The winner of that matchup is not an easy matchup, but I think they're a far better team than both of those teams. And I think that should they make the final, they match up very well with both Virginia and Georgia Tech, who's the other seeded side. So I'm going to go with Florida State, and a team I can see making some noise. I wouldn't say this is really an upset, really, but I could see them causing some trouble. Is North Carolina. I've really liked how they've closed the year. It's pretty weird taking a blue blood as an upset, but as a 6th seed, I think that counts. As a 6th seed, I can see them getting through their side, beating Notre Dame, and then beating Virginia Tech. In fact, I expect them to beat Virginia Tech if we're pointing out specific upsets. If that matchup should happen, I like the interior matchup. I think that favors North Carolina, and they could, they just beat Florida State. They could win another one. This is the ACC tournament that's held in North Carolina. Why can't North Carolina make it to the final? So I'm going to take Florida State, but I think my sleeper team's North Carolina for this one.
Yeah, you stole my sleeper. I was gonna go with North Carolina as well. I think that they match up well against Notre Dame, and Virginia Tech doesn't necessarily pose that many. I think North Carolina can beat Virginia Tech, I should say. And then with that being said, I've seen North Carolina play Florida State well, and they won a game against them recently. So I like their chances to maybe even sneak into a championship game. But with that being said, I am going top dog in the first one. Unfortunately, I never really loved taking 1 seeds, but I am going to go Virginia. I just think that they're the most complete team talent-wise, as well as they're playing the best as of right now. We've seen them move up the rankings recently, as well as the way that their defense will travel. It's whether or not they're going to have the offense that goes with that defense and makes them as dangerous as they can be. I really like their matchup against the winner of Syracuse and NC State, and drawing Georgia Tech on their top half of the bracket is something that doesn't necessarily scare me away from picking the Cavaliers. So I'll take the 1 seed here in the ACC to get the job done.
Yeah, and one thing I wanted to comment about is that I feel like the draw that Virginia got, I mean, they were the 1 seed, so they deserve it. But I feel like there's a distinct difference between the like having a 6 seed Carolina, a 7 seed Louisville, a 10 seed Duke, than it is. I think Georgia Tech's a pretty good team. They have the ACC Player of the Year in Moses Wright. They've got Jose Alvarado, another really good piece. And they've played Virginia twice this year, and both have been very close games where Virginia ended up winning, but it wasn't decisive. And that could absolutely be a game that Georgia Tech wins. But I like you said, I think that Syracuse, Virginia dismantled. NC State actually beat Virginia, but Virginia played very poorly in that game and still was within 1 possession for most of it. And so I think that's the wise pick. I just think that should they get to a matchup with Florida State has that advantage in just a personnel standpoint. But I like that pick, and you can never go wrong with Coach Tony Bennett. That guy's awesome. Best coach in America, in my opinion.
Yeah, definitely. It's going to be cool to see what happens in the ACC. You have a team like Duke who needs to pretty much run the table and win to make the NCAA tournament. And it'll be interesting to see what North Carolina is capable of after both of us highlighting them as our sleeper team. All right, let's jump down to the Big Ten, and I'll get us started here in this one and talk my winner and a sleeper for you to think about. And I'm going to go with my winner as not the 1 seed in Michigan, but I'm going to go with Illinois, the number 2 seed. I think they have a game against Iowa that matches up well with them, if that's going to be the way that works. Illinois and Iowa are the 2 and the 3 seeds. And what they were able to do against Michigan without Adesumu has really turned the page of what I believe that team is capable of throughout this entire postseason. Michigan's very good, but they didn't show me enough at the end of the season. They've lost multiple games here down the stretch, and I think Illinois is just a little bit fresher of a team. And with that being said, I'm going to pick the Illini to get the job done here in the Big Ten. Kofi Cockburn and Adesumu, Turbello and company are gonna get it done for me, and the Fighting Illini are gonna punch their ticket in emphatic fashion to be the number 1 seed into the big dance. This one hits a little closer to home for me, but I'm going to go with my sleeper of we've talked about it a couple different times, and it's going to be Penn State. They're sitting there at the 11 seed. I think they are going to be able to get the job done against Nebraska. And then Wisconsin is a team that Penn State can match up well with. Wisconsin's the 6th seed that they would play right after that. And then I think their run will probably either end there or have a miracle showing to try and beat Iowa. But Iowa's that team that they'd face next after another double bye. But with that being said, I think you can see a team that has talent and depth and has gone through a couple different COVID issues. They're in this season. They're playing with an interim coach, so a lot to kind of rally behind for Penn State. And I think you could see them kind of make some noise and play in a few rounds that most people didn't think they would play in.
Yeah, and I think I'm going to agree with you on Illinois. I think that Illinois is more determined than Michigan right now. I think that I actually listened to a podcast today where Adesumu was the guest, and he was talking about how they played the full Big Ten schedule, and they're 16-4 in Big Ten play. They played 20 games. Michigan is 14-3, including a loss to Illinois, and had 3 games to go. And you can be like, oh, they're not against great teams, but you still got to play those games. Like, the Big Ten is so deep. That's the whole point of the Big Ten. Like, why it's so good is the depth. And so I think what that matters is that Illinois beat Michigan the first time. Feels like they were snubbed as the Big Ten champions because they closed the year better. They had Michigan just lost to Michigan State because a game that didn't matter. So I'm going to go with Illinois. I will say that the top side, again, it seems a little easier on paper. Obviously, you might have to play Tom Izzo or Mark Turgeon in the first round out of that with that is Maryland and Michigan State. I just think that Illinois is too determined right now. And then the one thing that's huge that and why I'm going to agree with your sleeper team as well is because Joe Wieskamp is day to day, which is a great update for Iowa. That he sprained his ankle and it looked really bad, but he's so integral to their team that if he's not playing or not playing well, it makes it easier for Illinois, but also for your Penn State Nittany Lions, because they win a game against Nebraska that I think they should win. They played Wisconsin very tight. They played them very well. I think Wisconsin should be favored in this game, but by no means would it surprise me if Penn State's able to win that one, because Wisconsin's just not playing very well right now. And there they are playing Iowa with possibly no Joe Wieskamp. And so, yeah, that's my sleeper team. Another team, not to be too repetitive here, but another team I could see making a little bit of noise is a Minnesota. They closed the year really poorly, but they have a great player in Marcus Carr. They play Northwestern, and then they would play Ohio State. And I think that is where their dreams would shut down. Minnesota did beat Ohio State earlier in the year, and then play Purdue, and Minnesota beat Purdue. So those are two teams that are seated pretty low. Minnesota's the 13th team in the Big Ten, but it wouldn't do the craziest thing in my mind if they were able to win 2 games in the Big Ten tournament.
Yeah, for sure. And also watch out for Michigan State sitting up there at number 9. They're going to play Maryland in their first round game, and then the winner of that game will go on and take on Michigan in Michigan's first game of the tournament. We saw Michigan State pose a whole lot of problems for Michigan here late in the season. So watch out for that. And that's another potential team that could win some games and really surprise down the stretch. They're hotter than almost any team other than, I would say, Illinois right now in the Big Ten with some of their late wins. So watch out for Sparty down the stretch as well. And I also like your Minnesota pick. I almost said them as well. All right, let's talk Big East. Give me some of your thoughts about your winner and your sleeper.
I've got a winner that I'm not sure it's going to surprise you, but I think it might surprise some of the listeners. I'm taking UConn. I think UConn closed the year really well, and the reason they're not higher in the rankings in general is because James Bouknight missed time. This is a team that I think is disguised as a 10 seed in terms of the real bracketology, and they play more like a 5 or 6 in my opinion, especially when James Bouknight's healthy. They've got a nice guard in RJ Cole, an experienced player. They've got a really good defensive player in Isaiah Whaley, and they have a nice shooter in Tyler Pauley. They play as a team that is hungry, and they I think it's the same thing that we experienced with Illinois, is when their star player went out, that UConn got better, just like Illinois did. When Iowa went out, they were able to improve the other pieces, and now that they're back, the whole team is better. So I'm taking UConn. I also like their draw. I think that Providence will probably be their first round opponent, and that's not an easy one because Providence has a really good player in David Duke, and Ed Cooley's a great coach. But if they get through that, I really like their chances against Creighton, and I'll tell you why. I think that the Greg McDermott is back for Creighton, and there's just some divisiveness. The team is unhappy with him, and rightfully so, with a lot of the remarks that came out that were racial in nature. And so I just don't see a team that is kind of divided winning this tournament. And I think UConn right now is hotter than any other team. And as for a sleeper, I think Providence, if they were able to beat UConn, would have a really nice path. But I'm going to go with St. John's. St. John's plays Seton Hall. So the winner of that game, to me, has a really good chance to run the table, because Villanova, being the 1 seed, has opened up the path for the 5 seed, which is St. John's and Seton Hall. Just because I think Villanova is great. They're very well coached, but when you're missing the pieces they are, and they're not as good as they typically are, that's a really open path. So I think I'm going to go with UConn, and then my sleeper is going to be the 4 or 5 team, which, if that counts, because it opens up the whole path. You can't turn that one down.
Yeah, definitely. No, I agree with you. I like the UConn pick. I really do. James Bouknight's an absolute monster. And I know what you're saying about Creighton. And before you even mentioned that, I was going to pick Creighton, and now I'm hesitant to do so, because I do think you're right about all of that with their coach and the kind of the animosity that's kind of surrounding that program right now. But with that being said, I do think they have the talent, the second best talent other than a healthy Villanova, and the healthy Villanova isn't necessarily in this tournament right now, unfortunately. And so that being said, I am going to stick with Creighton to win it. Not really in love with that pick, but we'll ride with Creighton, and I do think I like their chances against either Xavier or Butler to get at least to the point where they're playing probably UConn. And I don't know. I just think talent in their shooting will prevail, and it's time to rally together. It's essentially you've put in however much work, however much time to get to this point of the season, and clearly there was something that happened with the athletics department and the team and things like that to allow the coach to be reinstated. And so I think there's going to need to be some sort of rallying cry for Creighton. And but watch out. I mean, if they're kind of divided, they're going to get run out of the gym by whoever they play, and particularly UConn if they win their first matchup. So I do like your UConn pick, and I'm going to go opposite of you of St. John's. I'm going to go Seton Hall. Mamukashvili is an absolute monster. They've been in so many close games, and I think they're going to be able to have enough to get past St. John's. And then, like you said, Villanova doesn't necessarily pose the same threat that they normally would in this tournament. So I think, with that being said, you could potentially see that 4 or 5 team easily in the Big East championship game.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love Mamu. I've been on Mamu's team since I saw him a couple of years ago. I've been like, this guy's awesome. So I love that pick. And I think that the team that wins that one is going to be playing in the championship, to be honest. I just don't see Villanova, as well coached as they are, as many capable players that they still have. I just don't think that they're going to beat the teams on the bubble. Like St. John's and Seton Hall, this is almost like must win each game. And whoever wins that first one has a great chance of punching a ticket through an automatic bid. So I see that as a really clear path for those two teams. So I like that pick. And obviously Mamu, as I'm going to call him, the Seton Hall Pirates Captain Brownbeard. So just I won't be rooting against him. I'm just gonna hope St. John's wins for the sake of accuracy, but I won't be mad.
Yeah, no, for sure. All right, let's jump down and talk Pac-12. Here is our next tournament to get to, and I'll take us through some of my thoughts here first. And Oregon is the 1 seed. USC is the 2 seed. The 3 seed is Colorado, and the 4 seed is UCLA. I think I'm probably going to go with Oregon. I just think they've been playing the best basketball down the stretch. With, ironically enough, Colorado and USC are ranked, but Oregon is not somehow in the AP poll this week. But with that being said, I just like the versatility that Oregon has on their roster, as well as I think they're the best coached team in the Pac-12. And I think when you get an Oregon team into a tournament scenario, we've seen them make a lot of runs in the past, not only in the Pac-12 tournament, but the NCAA tournament in general. And so this is a team that I'm going to be very high on come tournament time. I always am. But this is a team that always seems to find another gear. And this is a bracket where you look at and you're like, this could be pretty much wide open in my eyes. I think you could see anyone up from number 1 to number 6 in Stanford has a chance to really go run deep. 7 in Utah has 2 opportunities where I think that they have good opportunities to win, and USC should be on alert in that second game. So this one to me is the most wide open bracket that I can think of, other than maybe the Big East.
Yeah, and I'm looking at this bracket, and it almost feels like USC's got the best draw as a 2 seed. I just put more faith in the fact that UCLA opens up their first game with Oregon State. That's not easy. Oregon plays Arizona State or Washington State. If it's Arizona State, they have a lot of talent. It's not a team that I think is very good. We just saw them get run out of the gym at the Huntsman Center in Salt Lake City by a team that I wouldn't classify as a great team either in Utah. But Remy Martin's a really good player. He's been playing a lot of big games. If Josh Christopher and Marcus Bagley play, they've got NBA talent on their roster. So Oregon's got a harder draw. USC's got the best draw. I just don't think their guard plays good enough, but they somehow eke out games. They hit a game winner and beat UCLA in a game where they did not lead until that game winner. And you look at Colorado. Colorado presumably will play Stanford. They've had their way with Stanford both times they met this year, but on paper, Stanford's pretty well matched with Colorado. So I'm going to go with Oregon with you as well. I think that we were kind of on the same page that they're the best. They're the best coach team, and they're playing the best right now. I think that Duarte with Will Richardson back shooting well really gives them a great backcourt, and the backcourt is usually what I use to determine these things. So I'm going to go with Oregon. And as for a sleeper, I don't see. I know who you're going to go with, and I do like this pick. But like you could look at any of these. If Arizona State's able to beat Oregon in the second round, then they've got a clear path. If Stanford's able to beat Colorado, they've got a clear path. So I don't really see the upsets happening in this one. If I'm going to choose one, I'm going to go with a desperate Stanford team that's trying to make a bubble push, but I don't see them beating Colorado.
Yeah, I think my sleepers would be Arizona State at 8, Utah at 7, and Stanford at 6. I think those are all fair teams, and I think Stanford is probably the team that needs their push into the deep parts of this tournament more so than Utah, who doesn't have a chance in heck of making the NCAA tournament unless they win the thing, or Arizona State, who's kind of in a similar scenario as well. So I like the Stanford pick. I do think Utah beats Washington. I don't think Washington's very good. And then I think they have a good chance of beating USC. They've beaten them once already this year. So that's a scenario where I can see Utah kind of pushing past the second round of this tournament, which is definitely not going to be a very favorable pick most places other than here. But I also think Arizona State should be able to get the job done against Washington State. And then they, like you mentioned, they have all the talent and to really give Oregon a great game. So yeah, I don't know. I think this is going to be the one where you see the 1 through 4 seeds really be there at the end, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think this is one where I'd pick the chalk, but I will say Utah beat USC in Salt Lake City not too long ago. Matchup wise, they do a good job defensively, and they're very dependent on Alfonso Plummer shooting wise. But in terms of matchups, Evan Mobley's a great player. No disputing that from my end. But Utah does a good job handling the primary scoring big men. They'd far rather have you have a big man that they can deny, that they can double, than you having a guard like McKinley Wright who can control the game, like a Chris Duarte who can hit big shots on the wing. They're a lot better at guarding with Brandon Carlson, Mikhail Yantunin, and players like that. So I think that's one that you could look for an upset, but I don't see it happening twice. I think USC's got a little too much talent up front, and they won't take kindly to having a bad performance in Salt Lake.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. All right, let's bump down and talk Big 12. I think this is one of the more fun brackets to look at personally. So I'm just going to flip it to you and give me your thoughts. I'm pretty sure I know who you're going to take to win the thing outright, but let's hear it.
Yeah, this is for sure my favorite bracket of all of them. So I'll just take you through all the seeds. The Big 12 has 10 teams in it. You've got the number 1 seed Baylor. You got number 2 in Kansas came along strong and finished the year well. One note about Kansas is David McCormick and Tristan Enaruna are not playing for Kansas because I'm not sure if they tested positive or they were in contact tracing, but Kansas is still playing in the tournament. But keep in mind they will not be playing. And then the 3 seed is Texas with a strong close to the year. Number 4 is West Virginia. Number 5, Oklahoma State. Number 6, Texas Tech. Number 7, Oklahoma. Number 8, TCU. And number 9, Kansas State. And number 10, Iowa State. I will say Iowa State is great in the Big 12 tournament, but that will not be my pick for this one. I'm going Baylor. I'm pretty sure you knew that was coming. I love Baylor. I think they're amazing. So Baylor, I like this draw. I will say that I think the Baylor side's a little harder. I think West Virginia and Oklahoma State right now are playing better than both Texas and Texas Tech. So I wish Baylor, for the sake of that pick, in terms of how confident I feel, I wish they were playing as on the bottom side. But I still go with Baylor. They're just the best team, and I really think that if you can play defense and offense at the same level, both elite levels, that you're going to win. And as my sleeper, I think this is going to be an obvious one, but I'm going to take Oklahoma. I think that Oklahoma, I don't know. See, here's the issue. Does Texas Tech, because all they have to do is win one game and go to the semis, whereas Oklahoma has to win another one. I can see Oklahoma beating Kansas because they're missing a player, and Oklahoma has a good chance of beating them. but I could also see anyone from that bottom half coming out. So in the Big 12, you got 7 great teams and three not very good ones. And so I'm going to go with Oklahoma as my sleeper just because they'd have to win one more game. But I also think Texas Tech has beaten Texas twice, and I would not be surprised at all if they're going to advance to the title game, because all that takes is winning a third time against Texas, which I'm not sure will happen, but it's not impossible. And then they play in either a shorthanded Kansas team or a team in Oklahoma who hasn't been playing their best. So that my sleeper's coming out of the bottom half. I'll just put it that way.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'm going to go Baylor as well. I think that's the obvious pick. I think the top half is more brutal than the bottom half in this one. I just think you're going to have TCU and Kansas State play first for the right to go and lose to Baylor. And is just the way that I'll put it. I mean, anything can happen, but I don't see TCU or Kansas State hanging with Baylor for very long in that second round matchup. But that second round has West Virginia playing Oklahoma State, which I think is going to be one of the best matchups in the tournament.
9:30 a.m. in Mountain Time on Thursday. I'm already awake for that one right now.
Yeah, it's going to be insane. And so that's an amazing matchup that's going to take place in the second round. Two teams playing very good basketball right now. And the winner is going to have the task of them going on and playing Baylor, or the winner of Baylor or either TCU or Kansas State. But yeah, and so I think that's a tough matchup personally. And so but with that being said, I do like Baylor's chances to be able to make that happen and move on. I like the Oklahoma pick as a sleeper, but I just don't see them getting past Kansas in this one in my eyes. They just have not been playing great basketball down the stretch. And that kind of lack of momentum coming into this is hard for me to get behind. I think even saying like Texas is going to come out of this almost sounds like a sleeper out of this half, because I think you're really have Baylor and Kansas. But with that being said, we've seen them play a couple times. And if that's the Big 12 championship game, I mean, I'd put a lot of money on Baylor in that case scenario, because they've just seemed to have a recipe that really stifles Kansas. So I like the Texas Tech pick as well. Mac McClung is one of the guys that I can always get behind in some sort of atmosphere like this. But I don't know. I think I like your kind of the way you summarized it, is the sleeper is going to come out of the bottom in my eyes. And then I don't see West Virginia or Oklahoma State beating Baylor.
Yeah, here, let me ask you a question, just because this bracket is so loaded, and as are other conferences, I just don't think you see the big dogs playing each other as early as you do in this one. So in that quarterfinal matchup between Oklahoma State and West Virginia, who do you have winning in that one?
I don't know. I really don't know. I would probably say West Virginia, but I think it's going to be a dogfight, and Cade Cunningham is going to be. I hope, because Cade Cunningham's better than that ankle sprain as well. So I think his distinction is day to day as well. But with that being said, stuff like that lingers. And I don't know. I would just say West Virginia's almost a little bit more of the complete team, but Oklahoma State has the best player. So, but I would probably take West Virginia in that one. How about you?
Yeah, I think you put it well. And the one thing that concerns me about just being like, oh, West Virginia's going to win, is that Cade did not play against West Virginia in the regular season finale, and Oklahoma State still won. And while I don't think that would happen twice, but if you insert Cade into that, and you see that, oh, they won without Isaac Likely and without Cade Cunningham, I feel weird picking against that team. But at the same time, I think Miles McBride and Derek Culver. So if Cade's not playing, I think you got to go West Virginia. If Cade's playing, if Cade does play, I'd take Oklahoma State. I think that he's just meant to shine in like big moments. This team, if you watched them even a month and a half ago, I feel like a month ago was kind of the turning point. I told you, I was like, I'm really high on this team. I watched them have a few upsets and play a few really good overtime games. I think I'm going to take Oklahoma State if he's playing. If he's not, you got to go with West Virginia. But that's not really a slight to West Virginia. I mean, I think they're really a contender to make like an Elite Eight, because they can get hot outside. I just think that the energy and passion, and when Cade plays, I feel like he's going to take it personally, the matchup with Miles McBride, and their defense will irritate West Virginia. So I'm really looking forward to that one. I'm going to be waking up before class and watching that game, and probably watching that game more than I do Dr. Vergobi's class. So hopefully he doesn't listen to this, but you and I probably are going to be in the same boat on that one.
Yeah, I don't think Dr. V is necessarily tuned into the College Sports Hive. I think if he knew that we were both doing it, he would give it a listen. But anyway, if you're out there, Dr. V, we'll be there in spirit and in class, not so much in mental capacity. But anyway, I agree with you. I think healthy Cade Cunningham is a problem for every team in this bracket, including Baylor. And so with that being said, I love the Baylor pick. Oklahoma State is almost, it feels wrong to say they're a sleeper, but they are sitting there at the 5 seed. So they're more of a sleeper than Texas would be in this scenario of things. So anyway, the Big 12 is going to have some tremendous games come down the stretch in this championship bracket. So get ready to look forward to some great ones there in the Big 12. All right, the last one we'll pick for all of y'all in this episode is the SEC. This one's interesting. I think this one is also a little bit open, and I want to get your thoughts on the SEC and what you're going to expect to come out of this in a sleeper possibly.
Yeah, this is one I don't feel very good about. I don't think any of these teams are really as good as some of the ones we highlighted in the Big 12. Arkansas has been playing great of late. Alabama has been really good throughout the year. You got Tennessee as a 4 seed that I was high on for much of the year, and they've just disappointed me a lot of late. And then I have a hard time getting behind any of these teams. And LSU can score points, but they can't defend. So there's a lot of holes in this thing. I'm going to go with Arkansas. And I'll tell you why I think Arkansas is going to win over Alabama. And the reason is I think that their offense is more sustainable. I think Alabama takes a lot of shots, just like kind of the first shot that's like available, not necessarily bad shots, just I don't think they work the ball around and take the best shots. And I feel like in this type of year, you want to optimize what type of shots you're taking, because their defense is really good and they're just still playing as if their offense is their defense, if that makes sense. Like their best offense actually, their best defense this year is actually their defense. And in prior years, their best defense was their offense. And it still feels like they're playing to that way. And it's almost counterintuitive. And I feel like Arkansas exposed a little bit of a recipe when they played in Arkansas, and Arkansas was able to control the pace of that game. Moses Moody got to the free throw line, and they're just playing the best basketball right now. I would not be surprised any other way. And as for the sleeper, I think this is an easy pick. Just in terms of talent, I think I got to go with Kentucky. I really hope it, for the sake of just kind of blue bloods upsetted. I hope that they don't run through, but if they're able to win their first game, they play Mississippi State. This is the 8-9 matchup. Then they play the bye, and they play the 1 seed Alabama. If you win against a 1 seed, then you have the 1 seeds draw. So I think that's the easiest pick for it. And I wouldn't be stunned if they beat Alabama, but I'd still favor Alabama by a decent margin.
Yeah, I like that. I'm going to go Arkansas as well. I think they're just a little bit more of a complete team as of right now. And plus, when I watched that game against when it was Arkansas, Alabama, I was just very impressed of the way that they handled themselves in that spotlight and that situation, and they played a phenomenal game. With that being said, I'll take Arkansas. The potential matchup with LSU scares me in that aspect of things, just because LSU can really score, and they have just the potential to flat out outscore Arkansas. When you look at things, if there's a potential matchup with Tennessee and Alabama, I'm obviously much more in favor of Alabama in that matchup over Tennessee than I would be Arkansas over LSU. But my sleeper is actually going to be Florida. They're playing without Keontae Johnson. All of that happened earlier on this season, and they've been just kind of quiet the rest of the SEC way, but they're sitting there at the 5 seed. They'll play the winner of Vanderbilt and Texas A&M. And if they're able to win that, they'll move on to play Tennessee, which Tennessee has sometimes had games where they literally can't score at all. Like, they can play good defense and hold you to like 60 points, but they'll score 50 or not even 50 sometimes. So that's a matchup where I can see Florida making some noise. And if they get past Tennessee, they have a matchup with either Alabama or Mississippi State or Kentucky, whoever's able to win that game. And when you start to look at it that way, if Florida kind of gets past Tennessee, I think that really opens up the rest of of that bracket. And I can definitely see them kind of having that rallying cry of it was earlier on in the season, but things like that can often come back in times like this where you have a guy that's basically now just a coach, and he's there to rally the troops around and be around the team, and wishes he could be out there. But I don't know. I think Florida is a team to keep your eye on in this bracket, but I do think the inevitable winner will be Arkansas.
Yeah, I really liked that pick, and that was one I was curious about. It's just they've been really inconsistent, and I'll throw another one out there for a sleeper, and I think it's in the same vein. I think you can look at Missouri. I'm kind of off the Missouri train, but Quanzo Martin's a really good coach. But the one I've got here is Ole Miss. I think they closed the year pretty strong. They're the 6th seed. If they're able to win their first round matchup, they would play LSU in the second. I think LSU is the most susceptible of the top 3 to fall early in the tournament, just because they don't play defense. So if their offense isn't extraterrestrial, you can lose. And I think Ole Miss has a guy in Devontae Shuler that was a first team All SEC player that can really lead the way. And so I wouldn't be surprised if you see Ole Miss in the semifinals either. This is a pretty wide open one in my eyes in terms of who will make the semifinals. I think the best teams are Alabama and Arkansas, and that's reflected. But I think 3 through 7 is very close in this, whereas there's a bit of a distinction in other conferences, I would say.
Yeah, definitely. I'd agree with that. All right, that's going to be all the brackets that we have to pick for all of y'all. Hopefully you kind of enjoyed this format as we go through and kind of highlight some of our thoughts on what's going to take place in these just tremendous conference championship brackets. They're just going to be so fun to watch. So many good matchups down the stretch to look forward to. Any final thoughts from you, Leif, before we sign off and get to watching some basketball here this week?
Yeah, and then we'll try to give you some game previews as we find out who's playing whom. I think there's gonna be some awesome matchups like you alluded to, and when we see who's playing whom, and we can give you some of those semifinals, some of those championship previews, and keep your eyes peeled for those, and just enjoy the great basketball. As we're only 5 days away from Selection Sunday, and that's a day that I've been pining for almost 2 years now.
Yeah, it's going to be fantastic. So stay tuned. Make sure to tune into some of these early matchups. They're going to be so fun to watch. All right, that's going to do it for Leif and I on this episode. But take care, everyone. Stay safe, and hopefully you have a great rest of your day and your week, and enjoy the great basketball.
Have a good one.